Well, help. I've fallen. I can't get up.
Oh, man, are you okay? Here, grab my hand.
Yeah, thanks, man. Look, could you let me know when you mop the kitchen next time? These floors are really slippery.
I didn't mop the kitchen.
Then why are the floors so wet?
Oh, it's a new method of cooking I'm trying.
Cooking?
Yeah, well, we live in Australia and every day is like 30 plus degrees at the moment, so heat rises through the floor, and as long as the floor is well oiled, you can stir fry your vegetables on it. I'm just preheating the floor now. It should be ready to go in 10, 15 minutes.
On the floor? You put oil on the floor?
Yeah.
You know what? If it means I don't have to cook tonight, fine. Do what you want.
Oh, that reminds me. I need your help to do that shaky thing with the pan, aka the house, so we can swish the stir fry around and flip them over.
Walt, this is silly.
Yeah, you're right. Should we just order takeaway?
Yeah, I'll call the dumpling house now. What do you want?
They steam up an entire house to make a dumpling? Wow. I should try that!
Please, for the love of God, don't. There's part of my brain that like believes that you would actually give that a go.
Look, it's worth a shot.
We sit like one of our like go-to lunches when we're doing like a day of work together
is dumplings.
Steamed dumplings in the pan. So like, I'm concerned now. I really hurt my hip on that fall, bro.
The next time we have a long Get Commanded day, wear some like very, like porous shoes.
I like come to the house grip, taped up the windows. There's like holes in the roof.
Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. It's a GCP brought to you by POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast, where the ants stay outside the house. God damn it. I'm your host, Walt.
Deep cut reference.
Yeah. Well, the oil's probably bringing them in, to be fair.
That's fair. We use like, what, grapeseed oil or something?
It's possible.
Yeah. Hello, Commander players. I'm a sheep in wolf's clothing. Oh, woo! James. I'm also the alpha of the pack, as you can tell.
Alpha sheep.
With a wolf howl that goes, oh, woo!
Yeah.
that's
alpha
an alpha.
Sheep,
that's an alpha woo.
Not alpha ram.
No,
alpha sheep.
Sheep. That's
no,
true.
Sheep.
Yeah, don't judge me. What the fuck?
I'm not judging you. I'm just being clear.
I just wrote it in the thing and I didn't realize what I was writing.
Look, before we get to that transmission, we did want to remind you all that if you like this awful, silly shit that we do,
whatever this
is, we stream over on Twitch, twitch.tv/getcommanded. It's a great way to watch us play Casual Commander and occasionally CDH as well, with people in our playgroup who we like.
Yeah, we bring the vibes on our streams.
Yeah.
We've gotten really into it recently. We're gunning for that affiliate tag. We're actually unbelievably close. Thank you to everyone that's followed us already.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, once we're affiliates, you can do silly stuff like get custom emotes, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm not a streamer. Walt's more the streamy person than me.
I have been on Twitch, and so I'm familiar with the subscription package that you get of the little emotes and stuff.
There's actually a clip on our Twitch channel of me asking chat if they can clip stuff, and chat clipped that.
Chat clipped him asking if things could be clipped. Look, it was a proof of concept.
It was a proof of concept. If anything, now I understand that I'm ready to be publicly humiliated on a streaming platform.
Which is good, because we stream.
Yeah.
And look, if you can't catch the streams, we know we stream at late hours in Australia, which can be early hours in other countries. We upload them on YouTube as well. So you can subscribe over there and like, comment, do all the good stuff.
Yeah, there's a bunch of videos up there already, but there's plenty of backlog content prepared to go up. So go subscribe. There's plenty of content coming, but
so much.
We have stuff to get to on this podcast, not just silly stuff.
We do indeed. And I think we might have an incoming transmission from the deep depths of the galaxy, from the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded.
All games of Commander must end. You must have a plan to take your strategy to the conclusion of the game.
Hold up. Hold up.
I think we might be throwing back 80 episodes to episode 1.
Dude, this is a revisit of our very first episode together.
Which is not available on probably the platform you're listening to this on.
Because it was awful.
It is out there. You can find it. But yes, we had some significant audio problems because we sat down in a room and we're like, let's do something silly. And then it happened to be okay. So we decided to release it. And 80 episodes later...
We're here.
We're back.
I feel like, because last episode was about us and our story and stuff, so maybe the Space Commanders think that we've come a long way.
Yeah.
And we should revisit the topic of ending the game. Because to be fair, we've learned a lot about how to end the game.
Absolutely we have. And I think we also, like, the early episodes were very sparse. And when we go back and look at the scripts for those early episodes, those are very sparse. So it makes sense. We have a lot more examples and a lot more advice to give here than I think we did the first time that we did this. Like, a lot more.
I mean, I just remember last time we just sat in a room and rattled off cards that we thought ended games.
Yeah,
that was basically the episode.
There'll be a bit of that here,
yeah.
I think. But I reckon we should go, like, a little bit further and dive into, like... Because specifically we need to end the game.
And get to the conclusion of the game. Our strategy should be going towards the conclusion, right?
So this is, like, maybe a little bit of a revisit to the game length episode, almost.
I feel like we're going to do complaining again in this episode. We are going to complain about the fact that our games are too long.
I've said it only a few episodes back, like the hot takes episode or whatever. I was like, the games are still too long. Like, it's still a problem. We still need to fix it. I'm glad we're revisiting this and helping people to shorten their games if they can. Yes.
All right, look, let's start at the very top. Let's get some definitions out the way first, because we are obviously going to be talking about win conditions in this episode. So what is a win condition when we're talking about deck building?
Yeah.
We've actually said this a bunch of times. Specifically, if you go to episode 37, in our deck building template episode, I can't believe that's episode 37. That feels a while ago now.
Long time ago.
We explain all the deck building principles and like what cards fit in what categories. And in win conditions, we specifically said these are cards to bring the game to an end. If you're in a combat strategy, it can be a card like Overwhelming Stampede, Craterhoof Behemoth, a Chroma's Will. Otherwise, it could be a Comet Storm or of Altar of Dementia in Mill. These are cards that get you from point A, which is playing the game, to point B, which is ending the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Importantly, this is not like to say that these have to be instant win. Like, they don't have to be cards that say you win the game on them. They're there to take you from a like advantageous position or board state or something into the win, right?
Well, yeah,
it gets you over the line.
Cast Craterhoof Behemoth with an empty board. What does it do?
It does nothing, right?
Exactly.
It gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Whoa, sick.
Wow, that was a cool 8-mana spell, bro.
So yes, they're just to get you over the line. And consequently, I think we said 4 was probably the golden number. I think this is probably a number that I know at the time we said it was really like set in stone. I think it does depend, because there are commanders that are pretty good at bringing the game to an end on their own.
Yeah, like if you're running Kamal Heart of Krosa, you have Overrun in your command zone.
You could probably run maybe one other win con in your deck because you know you're going to get access to him, and that would be totally reasonable.
Yep.
But you should have at least one alternate. So like if you have a really obvious win con that you're always gunning for, have at least one other way you can go. So like I know when we talked about the like going combat damage kind of thing, we said that like at least one of those examples should be something like a ram through.
Yeah.
You know,
so
like
if you're going tall and you all of a sudden someone plays like I can't be attacked.
Yeah.
Like a sphere of safety and it's like impossible to pay. You can use ram through, which is a spell that like deals damage to a creature, and if it has trample, excess damage is dealt to the player.
And it's effectively a fling spell in this case, and that's going to get you there. And like, you know, in a similar way, if you had a super wide board, I know we specifically mentioned this card last time we mentioned it, which was Kyra Negotiations.
Yeah, this card 6 tap creatures deal damage.
Yeah,
right?
so it's a 4-mana enchantment. It just straight up says like tap a creature. It deals 1 damage to any target. Or maybe Kyra Negotiations does 1 damage to any target.
So if you have like 20 tokens, you've got 20 damage on board right there.
Straight up deal 20 damage. So again, it gets around those fogs, those ghostly prisons, those kinds of effects that might be stopping you. This is going to be another way you can pivot to make sure you can still bring the game to an end. Like, in other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket with the win cons. Have at least one little side way you can go if you need to, or a couple if you feel like it.
Yeah, I think I've been leaning on more alternate win cons in a lot of my my decks recently.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's more interesting to assemble an alternative win con.
Absolutely.
And also you don't get bored of your deck, which is another thing that I really like about that.
Definitely.
Look, something else I think we should define at the start of this episode is enhancers, because we usually talk about win cons and enhancers very closely together. I think in episode 37 we specifically spoke about them kind of back to back.
They kind of do a similar thing, but the difference I think that we found between them, right, was that the win con is the thing that gets you over the line, and the enhancer is kind of the rocket fuel, like the nitrous oxide that just gets the deck whirring along towards the win con being viable.
Yeah.
But it's not usually the card that gets you there itself.
No, it's the difference between both cards, both card types, win con and enhancers, don't do much on their own.
No.
But combine it with an advantageous board state or an advantageous cycle of things you're doing, then it can do it. So we defined enhancers in that episode as cards that make the rest of your deck whir along but do very little on their own. We even listed some examples. Panharmonicon, Tormod the Desecrator, Teferi's Ageless Insight, Anointed Procession, Double Vision. These are all cards that say, all right, you do one thing, do it twice. Like Panharmonicon.
4 of those cards say that, actually.
Or Double Vision, or Anointed Procession. All of those say, okay, you have ETBs, do those twice. You make a token, do that twice.
Yeah.
Instant Sorcery, do that twice as well, bro. Go for it.
All these are really obvious examples, which I think why we lean towards them. But there are other cards the Tormod the Desecrator there. This is going to see the cards leave your graveyard and make you zombies. So I think the really obvious difference that you'll see between these two kinds of cards is the win con is kind of the last card you play, often to bring the game to an end.
Might be the very last spell you resolve.
Yeah, whereas the enhancer usually comes down early to mid in the game, I would say. If it comes down early and doesn't get answered, you might end up winning that game. But
just as a result of having the enhancer.
The value that you get will probably get you there, but it's not the card that you cast that makes someone go, okay, good game. You know.
Yeah. Someone casts Craterhoof and it's like, GG. I don't want to even do the math.
Don't care about the maths. We know you've got us.
Yeah. Someone casts Anointed Procession and it's like, oh, we got to deal with that.
Yeah.
That's the difference. It's good game and we got to deal with that.
Definitely.
They're the differences.
And I think the number that we brought up here was 5 was the recommendation.
If anything, we kind of said 5 is the top end and you should err on the side of less.
I think most of the time when I look at someone's deck and they're like, hey, I need to find room for 3 new cards I want to put in, this is the first place I look where I'm like,
for sure. Me
too.
Too.
If you have a deck and you've got 8 or 9 enhancers, so much of the time you're going to be deploying that Anointed Procession and then drawing doubling season and going okay, cool. Eventually my deck will be great, but right now it's actual nothing.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did this on stream the other night when we were upgrading Wizard Down Under's patron deck.
Totally.
We immediately went, okay, we're looking at a lot of enhancers here. We probably should cut that down so we can, if anyone watched the stream, you'll understand this, get to the meat and potatoes of it all. Deep cut reference.
Metaphors were there.
But yeah, I think it's also really important for us to really identify why we need win conditions. Because we've complained about it before. Without them, games will just go on forever.
Yeah.
And it will you can make a bunch of 1/1s, but you're dealing 1-2 damage, and then the opponent will gain 4 life, and then you'll go to your next turn. Maybe you have 4 tokens this time, deal 4 damage, then they'll gain that 4 life back. It's just you got to end the game. And win con cards are ways to end the game.
Totally. I think the thing is, often the win con card is what takes your very, very advantageous spot and turns it into a win. The thing that can happen when you play a really grindy game where you don't deploy a win con card, either because you don't have them or you just don't draw them, is that, every turn that goes by is a turn where someone is more likely to board wipe.
Yes.
Or in some way answer this great board advantage that you have, and that's going to extend the game even more again.
Yeah. Trying to let's say, okay, you pass on end step, your Monarch triggers, you finally draw that Overwhelming Stampede, and then they board wipe. That Overwhelming Stampede now doesn't do anything until you rebuild your board.
Your turns specifically are probably, your game is going to be at least 4 or 5 turns longer than it was literally a turn ago.
Yeah. The other thing is, in Commander, you have 3 opponents to kill.
Yeah.
That's so much harder than in a 1v1 format.
Oh,
so, like there's so many 1v1 formats that like a whole deck strategy is either outvaluing or just progressively slowly beating their opponents down.
Yeah, I mean, the burn archetype doesn't exist in Commander. Like,
No.
it can be
I
done.
mean, Torbrand, you could argue that it can be done.
But it's bad. Like, burn is bad in Commander, which is
Yeah.
pretty funny because, like, pretty much every single 1v1 format that you can play in Magic,
Burn will always exist.
it's present at the very least. It
Yeah.
might not be the top of the meta, but it's, like, near there, and it's usually something you have to sideboard around. But in Commander, nope. It's just straight up a bad strategy because
Yep.
you've got to deal 120 damage collectively around the table to win the game.
Yeah, and like there are definitely some deck strategies in Commander, like for example, Aristocrats. That's kind of like a slow win con. Like I'm
It is.
slowly going to try and outvalue you by slowly sacking creatures and draining
Yeah.
you slowly. But there are still win condition cards in Aristocrats that you should run.
Totally. My Marchesa deck, I run Command the Dread Horde.
Yeah.
Like
I
that-
love how you went Liliana card. Command the
I almost
Dreadhorde.
said Liliana commands the Dread Horde, which to be fair is what happens.
It's the artwork.
It's
yeah.
the artwork, exactly. But yeah, like, I still need... There are still times, even with a bunch of Aristocrats on the board and a free sack outlet, it can still be like, okay, I have 25 creatures, but the highest player is at 40 life, and I can only deal 25 around the table.
But if I reanimate the whole
If I
graveyard,
reanimate like 5-6 more creatures, then suddenly I can get there.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, you still need these cards that get you just over the line. It's very, very rare that a deck works so well that it can have no win cons whatsoever in Commander. Even in CDH, like obviously CDH has a bunch of combos. I play a stacks deck in CDH.
Yeah.
There are like win conless stacks decks. Mine still has a Craterhoof Behemoth in it.
Yep,
Because you still need to win the game at some point.
and I have lost to it on
Yeah.
occasion. I'm not saying a lot, but on
no,
occasion.
it can happen. It's possible.
But yeah, I think like obviously there are, some decks that are a bit slower. But look, we've actually gone through some win cons in our deck archetypes series already.
Yeah. So we talked about tokens. We talked about
Spellslinger.
Aristocrats, Spellslinger. In specific episodes, we talked
Yeah.
about how to build those decks, and we mentioned win cons in them.
Correct.
Yeah.
So look, maybe at the end of this episode we can rattle off a few of our favorites.
Sure.
But I actually think there's some other things that now we're revisiting this topic at 82 episodes into our podcast. I think that there's some things that we can talk about that are more interesting than just win con cards.
I agree. I think there are other things that are contributing to the game going so long.
Yeah. And I think there are some cards in people's decks, specifically, that they could remove to make the game bloody end.
There you go. Like when we give the recommendations later for more WinCon cards, if you're someone who's WinCon light and needs a few more,
Yeah.
here you can go to and find the cards to remove to put in the WinCon
Exactly.
cards.
Now, look, I want to like put a preface to this section of the podcast that we're making these recommendations based on the command that we've received this week from the Space Commanders that are saying we need to end the game.
Yeah.
So we're looking at this through the lens of ending the game. We might reference some cards that you really love or some combos that you really love.
Totally.
If you love playing them, we're not saying if you don't take them out, you're an idiot. Like,
No.
we're saying that if you're struggling to get to the end of the game, like, to be honest, Walt and I are finding, this might be the right way to go about it.
100%. Like, we're certainly not judging the type of cards that are here. We just want to help you to end the game, and these are some of the cards that you can remove to just make the game go slightly faster.
I mean, I'll give my first example of cards that I particularly really like to play.
Sure.
And they're answers.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we're talking about answers, I'm specifically talking about like removal, both targeted and en masse.
Yeah.
And in our deck building template, we recommend about 8 to 10 targeted and about 1 to 5 mass. And that's it's a pretty broad range there, 1 to 5.
Yeah.
But if you run on the higher end of these scales, if not exceeding the 10 pieces of targeted removal, again, we're talking about casual here, not CDH.
Yes.
My Niv Mizzet deck has like 800 pieces of targeted removal.
The deck is basically
It's just counter spells.
deck.
Yeah. And then one or two combo pieces,
Yeah.
eventually you'll find them.
Yes.
But this is casual. So like if you're running, 10, 15 pieces of removal, what I've found in games where people build their decks like that, you just answer every threat before it can become a win condition.
Oh, I think the other thing to highlight about players who build their decks like this is you will often do such a good job of policing the table, but you will probably lose because you cannot
Yeah.
answer stuff forever.
Oh, I hadn't thought about it from that angle yet.
There are players who I know who are very near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate that they always have answers for stuff. They're super answer heavy in their decks.
They're the hero Gotham needed,
Yes.
not the hero Gotham
Straight
wanted.
up, they are falling on the sword. They
Yeah.
are like, let me, dive in front of the bullet that's coming, Do the Apu meme, like what's the Elon Musk one? Like valid criticism, and then like weird nerds like diving in front. But yeah, straight up, like these players will be like absolute gems and heroes to the table, and you'll be like, oh my god, thank you so much, I owe you big time. Anyway, I win.
Yeah. Oh, that board wipe really helped.
Yeah, to set me
win.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight up. Look, I think when we said, when we recommended numbers for mass removal of the board wipes, and we said 1 to 5, I think at the time we were pretty clear that like the only decks that should be running 4 or 5 are decks where board wipes are so good, like your
Planeswalker strategies, like Super Friends
decks.
Yeah.
It makes sense. If you have 5 cards in there that say destroy all creatures on them, those cards are amazing in your deck specifically because you keep all your Planeswalkers. There's no more things to attack your Planeswalkers anymore.
Even Voltron strategies, cards like Slash the Ranks
are
so good because you are Voltroning, so you want no wide boards coming at you because you don't have the wide board to block, and
totally.
So it's very dependent. But if you're in a very creature based deck, running board wipes is a little silly.
I honestly these days I run 2 board wipes in pretty much every deck I build. There's like maybe like 1 or 2 decks that I run more than 2 board wipes in, and it's usually like in my mono white deck I run a couple more because I acknowledge that that's just mono white's best way of answering stuff.
Yep.
Also, it's a deck that has cards like what's the Faith's Reward.
So you can do a bit of a combo of board wipe, Faith's Reward.
Wrath of God, Faith's Reward will usually win you the game. So there's a 2-card win con for you.
Yeah, there you go.
But seriously, like the vast majority of the decks that I build these days, admittedly, I'm a very creature-based sort of builder.
Yeah.
I just run 2. And half the time, one of them can be Undo Inversion, which is a land on the back.
Yeah, and it's ridiculously overcosted, but it's still a land on the back.
It's a board wipe. And seriously, you don't miss them. If you have enough card draw in your deck, it's very rare that a game will go to a certain length and you will not have found at least a board wipe to answer stuff.
Yeah.
And look, if sometimes you don't answer the whole board in time and the game comes to an end, who cares? You shuffle up and play another one.
And to be honest, this is my thing, right? Is I'd rather play 2 games than 1 game where I feel like
100%.
I was stuck in a game.
Yeah.
And look, I think that it's really important here that if you're hearing this and going, oh my God, I have someone in my play group that is board wiping every turn rotation. Like I build a board, gets wiped. Build a board, gets wiped. Have a conversation with them because you need to find a balance within your play group where everyone's having fun. And to be honest, that player might like playing board wipes in their deck.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that player needs to take them all out, but they need to maybe start playing some strategies like Super Friends where board wipes mean a win is led to, we're getting towards the end of the game by casting a board wipe.
Yeah, maybe the answer could just be when the board wipes get cast, just being okay, do you have a plan for the game ending or are you just board wiping?
Yeah, are you just extending this game for another hour? Or?
And not with any disrespect, but just straight up being okay, just so you know, you've added 4 or 5 more turns to this game. Do you have a plan for the game ending or are you just wiping for wiping's sake? Because there have been games where I've gotten to the end and someone's miles in the lead. In fact, I played a game just the other day with my Gandalf deck, and it was right for me to cast the Wrath of God.
That was where I got kicked out, and I left for a solid 45 minutes to an hour, and you were still in the game.
Honestly, I wish that when I drew that board wipe, I just recognized that the writing was on the wall and just conceded, because I board wiped, and then 2 turns later, the player who was in the lead won anyway. And this happens a lot. I know I mentioned it when we talked about the Experiment 50 games.
Yeah.
And we talked about, and especially turning point cards.
Oh, yeah, the turning point cards was really interesting. We found that
Cards at the Crux, the episode is called, but I logged them as turning point cards. But yes, Cards at the Crux.
But we found that board wipes were always a turning point, and also failed board wipes.
It was a huge thing.
Big thing that led to the end of the game.
There was a good chunk of the time where someone either mistimed their board wipe or the board wipe just didn't matter. There are times where someone is at such an advantage, whether it's that they've drawn 30 cards or they have 40 mana or something silly, where it's we can board wipe, but it's so unlikely.
You just break parity on us so quickly.
Yeah, and half the time, from the game log, those games just ended up going in that person's way anyway. And it makes you really think, I wonder if we just didn't board wipe, if we could have just ended the game faster, same result, and just shuffled up and started a new one.
This is why I actually think balance being unbanned, not actually that bad. Look, that's a hot take. I'm going to let the listeners hit me on that. Another thing to remove. Let's move on from board wipes and interaction.
Sure.
Removing soft/hard lock combos. Now, like, I'm talking about cards that combo together in really brutal ways, like full hard locks, like, for example, Solemnity and Decree of Silence. You've heard of Decree of Silence,
yeah? This is Decree of Silence is the enchantment that says when a player casts a spell, counter it and put a counter on Decree of Silence.
Depletion counter, I think it is.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then you sack it when it reaches a certain number of counters. But Solemnity, of course, is the enchantment that says players or just permanents can't get counters.
Yeah.
So if you have Solemnity, Decree of Silence, someone casts a spell, Decree of Silence counters it, tries to put a counter on itself, can't do that. Every spell that gets cast from here until the end of the game is countered.
So effectively, the person that has that combo is the only person that can cast spells for the rest of the game.
Yep, and it's fully like slowing the game to a halt.
But that player still needs to win somehow, right?
They do, and at this point, they may not necessarily have it because they've spent 2 of their cards on locking down the table.
Yeah, I mean, like, there are some other really hard combos, like Knowledge Pool and Draneth Magistrate.
Oh, yeah.
This is a weird one where Draneth Magistrate says your opponents can't cast spells anywhere but their hand.
Yep.
And then Knowledge Pool says whenever you cast a spell, have this weird little exile pool in the middle of the table.
Yeah, and then you can cast a spell from there, but Knowledge Pool, it's being
from
cast from exile,
exile.
so Draneth Magistrate says you can't do that, so no one ever casts any spells.
Yeah. So again, same thing. It's like a hard lock. And there's like soft locks, for example. Like, for example, having Grave Pact kind of things that whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices. So if you have something like an Ophiomancer and a sack outlet, you're stopping people developing their boards.
Yeah, anytime someone plays a creature, you just go, okay, I sack my thing. You have to sacrifice a creature. It's gone.
Yeah.
And again, we're just slowing everything down until basically nothing can happen until someone finds an out, right?
Honestly, something you used to run that used to piss me off to no extent.
Sure.
Spore Frog and Merrin.
Yeah.
That's a soft lock.
It is a soft lock.
You know, and like that kind of stuff is like, okay, anyone that's trying to get a combat damage based win con in is just like going, okay, how do I deal with this? I don't run Tormod's Crypt in my deck.
No. I think there's many reasons to take these cards out of your decks. I think one of them is that it can make an entire player's actions irrelevant. Certainly if you're the player who's most affected by one of these, that can be a thing. So like, in the case of, the Merrin Spore Frog loops, at the time you were playing a lot of Yuriko.
I was playing a lot of combat damage matters.
Yeah,
decks.
and it's like fully my deck does nothing while that thing is on the board. And other players might not be as affected, and so it might not feel so much like a hard lock, but just like blanking the actions of an entire player is just generally not fun. And also, it's going to make the game go longer.
Yeah, and I think that even just like generally, fogging over and over and over again, like, with Spore Frog and Merrin, pretty much most casual games end with combat damage, I find. Like, most of them will end like that.
Yeah.
There's some couple of exceptions. We're going to do another database episode soon. We'll find out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I feel like doing those kind of soft locks where it's like, you can't kill me, you can't kill me. Look, I'm going to highlight myself as a bit of a hypocrite here. And again, we're saying this with the lens of ending the game, but I run Savine and Pariah.
Yes.
Like, I run I can't take combat damage combo.
Yeah.
In fairness, it's a lot easier to get rid of than Spore Frog and Merrin.
I would put, funnily enough, even though it does like blank all the damage that's dealt to you, I would put it in that particular combo in a very similar camp to cards like Ghostly Prison and like Propaganda.
If you just remove one piece of it, you're fine.
You can get through. Yeah. And I it's funny like that. Theoretically, the ceiling on that is much higher, right? Which is that, like,
I can't take
any damage at
all
until you answer the thing. Whereas, Propaganda, you can pay 2 through. But because it's on a creature, it's so much easier to answer. But anyway, I guess to be honest, it's reminded me a little bit of when we talked about the stacks threshold. Because I'm reminded of the thing that we talked about when we talked about the difference between soft stacks and hard stacks.
Yeah.
And we basically differentiated between the two things based on the thing that was being prevented by the stacks. So, for instance, we said, stasis is obviously hard stacks because what are you preventing? Untapping your lands.
Which is a very important thing all commander decks need to do.
Can you play without untapping your stuff? Very unlikely. Unless you're playing some weird, intruder alarm kind of thing. But then at the other end, soft stacks, we included things like graveyard hate. And said, look, you're stopping a particular sort of player from engaging in a particular part of their deck. Can they still beat you? Probably. It's possible,
If anything, they probably should be able to. to.
Yeah, and to be honest, maybe the same argument can be made for stacks in general in terms of like cards to take out of your deck.
Oh, yeah.
To, stop the game from slowing down so much. I mean, I've played in games recently where someone dropped like a curse totem, for instance.
I mean, that's not even a stacks piece. That's a silver bullet, and we've talked about those before. Yeah,
I guess I would say it's both.
I mean, it is. It says you can't do the thing.
Yeah,
but for some decks, like especially if your commander has an activated ability.
Oh, I was playing Barbarous Saga. This is the commander. Yeah.
That's brutal.
This is the commander where you tap it and sacrifice 3 permanents and gain 3 life, draw 3
it's
cards.
Like your whole deck.
The whole deck is built around the fact like there's not even very much card draw in that deck because she draws you cards every single turn.
For reference, if you don't know Curse Totem, Curse Totem's a card that says activated abilities of creatures can't be activated.
Yeah, straight up.
So it's a hard stacks piece.
But only for particular decks at the table. So again, it's the kind of thing where there'll be players who see that and go like, okay, whatever, like my deck can continue to do the thing. But the fact that one player is being slowed way down in terms of what they can do does just mean that the game is likely to go longer. And I'm sure, like when we talk later about some cards that can accelerate the game, like not just win cons but accelerate, you can see that this other thing can happen. Like there are cards that don't necessarily like stop the game from ending, but they slow it down, and there are cards that accelerate it in the same way.
Great example, like even like cards like Curse Totem, Torpor Orb, it stops ETBs happening. Those cards are hard stacks, but even some softer stuff, like I'm talking like Sphere of Resistance kind of effects. Like
What's Sphere of Resistance again?
Sphere of Resistance just says all spells cost 1 more to cast.
Oh yeah.
So like, and especially if you combine that with like a Talia. And then another Talia, and another Talia. Like, just making everyone spend 1 million more mana on like their 2-drops. It just means that everyone's only casting 1 spell a turn.
Yeah,
and it just slows the game down. I get it. Stacks is a very viable, fun build that a lot of players enjoy. And again, remember, we're looking at this through the lens of ending the game. We're not saying you should never ever play stacks, but if you are trying to end the game or you're finding that your games are going too long, have a look at your decks and think, okay, why am I running Sphere of Resistance? Is it just a way for me to like slow down my opponents, or is it just slowing down everything?
Yeah, and have a look at the ratio of the slowdown cards versus the win con cards. Because like I have decks where I have to warn people before the game. Like my Enchantress list, for instance, doesn't have very many cards that admittedly stacks out my opponents very much. But it's got a bunch of the, like, you can't attack me.
The protection is different.
Yeah, it's got just a bunch of ways of saying you can't deal with my stuff. Like, if you drop a solitary confinement, you have Shroud, you can't take damage. And then you drop the enchantment that gives Enchantment's Shroud. It's like, okay, how am I ever getting out of this unless Walt discards his entire hand to the solitary confinement? So, yeah, like, you just got to think about, like, in that deck, I still run a bunch of cards. There are creatures that get, like, +2/+2 for every aura you control.
Yep.
And auras that give +2/+2 for every enchantment on the battlefield. Like there's still ways to get through once you slow it down. So I would say that's the other thing about slowing the game down is like, okay, once the game does slow down, how soon can you end it? Because the answer should be soon,
Yes, yeah. And I think that decks that are playing those should really make sure that they deploy them in a way that means they can end the game soon.
Yeah.
Like, I'm saying, like, your deck can run them, but I think it's a piloting thing as well. Whereas, like, if you're going, okay, I can deploy this card and keep myself alive for a while, but I don't see a win from here.
Yeah.
Maybe don't deploy that. Try and progress your board before you deploy it.
Yeah.
Like, if it's the choice between a solitary confinement and a Citizen's Champion, for example.
Oh, that's going to draw cards when enchantments ETB. Yeah, deploy the Citizen Champion first. I mean, this is also just, like, going to improve your gameplay, right?
Yes, it just makes you a bit of a better player. Because like, players that play like that win games. And that's like, it's not just a thing of us trying to view through this lens again. We've witnessed it. Like players that deploy in the correct order, which is, build a value engine, then protection, then win con.
Yeah.
That's a very well-tested and really good way of piloting your commander deck.
Oh, it just ends games. Like, I think the most of the games that I win, I think I'm good at being quiet.
Yes.
And I think I'm good at playing my deck in a quiet way. Not always. There are decks of mine that just empty the hand, and those are usually the games that I lose, where it's just like, dump all of my stuff. Look how threatening I am. I die. And yeah, like there's a particular art to deploying things in the right order. And yeah, like those protection pieces should be really, like, if you're gonna draw out the ideal game, I agree. It looks something like build up a value engine, build a board state, build a good hand.
Yep.
Deploy maybe a protection piece, then WinCon. Right?
Yeah.
That's the ideal way you should do things.
I mean, imagine it in the reverse order. Deploy WinCon first.
Yeah,
Protect. Build
Terrible.
board state.
Yeah, no.
That doesn't win you a game.
It won't work. And
Yeah.
it's I think those people who build really reactive decks will find that. They'll find
Yes.
like, oh, I always have an answer.
I mean, that's
I never
what
get a win.
That's what we were talking about before, right?
Absolutely.
At the start of this
It's
section. Which
exactly
was
like the
just
removal
answers
problem.
on answers on answers.
Yeah, protection can be the same.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we've been talking for 33 minutes, which is short for us, but I still think we should take a thrifty interlude.
Yeah, thrifty interlude. It's like Macklemore at a thrift shop. He's gonna
I'm
pop
gonna
some
pop some
tags.
I feel like we might have done that before, but I don't
Have
care.
we done that bit
I think we
before?
might have.
Oh, damn.
Look, it's dangling right there in front of
Oh,
us.
okay. I'll do another one. It's like when you're sleeping at night.
You don't
when
spend
you
any money when you
rest.
sleep.
No, you don't.
God,
I
that
mean,
is so wise, James.
I have dreams where I do splurge.
Do you have a dream where you wish you won and you want and you wish you and you wanted
and you
to
thought
do
you
so
could
much you
and
could
you'd
do anything? We've got lots to talk about, including some win cons. But before that, we're going to hear a little something about a thrifty card. And as a tradition, I will be performing a monologue, and this week it's the Cowled Merchant with some new wares. Although this is an old Thrifty Thursday.
This is like number
from the vault
7.
Thrifty Thursday's number 7.
Bloody hell, long time ago.
Some new wares for you, maybe as a podcast listener, but not for those who have kept up for a long time. Do you want to read the card I'm featuring this week?
I sure do, and it's a favorite. It's a favorite of the podcast. It's a favorite of mine. It's
Yes.
a favorite of one of our listeners, Brad.
We love it.
Agitator Ant. For 2 and a red, you get a creature that's obviously an insect. What else would it be? And it's a 2/2. At the beginning of your end step, each player may put 2+1 counters on a creature they control. Goad each creature that had counters put on it this way.
Ants are eusocial insects, which does not mean they want to socialize with you. It's like you're in the playground and everyone is spreading secrets about you, except they're all sisters and they're angry and they're ants and they say, kill, kill, like the basilisk in Chamber of Secrets. They're snake ants? They're snake ants! Peer into eyes, red and beady, and see thyself fall upon thine enemy's sword. Get budgeted!
I always feel like the Cowed Merchant never really sells anything. I feel like the lore of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, creator of Thrifty Thursdays.
I don't know what you mean.
But I feel like the Cowed Merchant just kind of rocks up in a city square, holds up like a colony of ants, says that, and then goes, away!
Bye!
Get budgeted and
Good
away!
luck. It's like, hey, can I buy that from you? Okay, he's gone.
I was interested in buying one of it.
yeah.
Never mind. Okay.
Oh, I really love the pervasive feeling of malaise. Why couldn't I buy that?
And snake ants.
Yeah, and there's snake ants. If you enjoyed that, text posts are released every Thursday in the Greensboro Commander Community Discord server where we hang out with our playgroup. So you can check out the Thrifty Thursdays channel in there and just generally hang out with us. It'd be cool.
Yeah, it's a good spot. It's chill. It's cool.
It's nice.
Thrifty and happens more than just on Thursdays.
It's true. It's true.
Let's get back into the topic,
let's
please.
do it.
All right, we've been in weird land for long enough. But we just talked about specifically what win cons were and what we should take out of our decks.
Yes.
I think we're finally at the point now where we can talk about what we put in our decks, the
Yes.
exciting stuff.
But I think before we talk about actual win cons, we will do it. We promise.
We'll get there.
It's in the name. We are going to talk about the thing I sort of alluded to in the first half, which was these kind of like accelerators is the word I want to use.
It's cards that will get us to the end of the game, that bring us closer to the end of the game.
Yeah, this is like the anti-stacks pieces, you know?
Yes, this is like, I mean, okay, great place to start.
Uh-huh.
Group hug.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I also am going to put in this category as well, group slug, which is kind of a new version of group hug that's
Totally.
starting to happen more
Yes.
often.
Yes.
Whereas group hug gives everyone a benefit, group slug just hits everyone, including the pilot of the deck.
Yeah, it's a similar thing, and often group hug turns into group slug. Can be a way that people do stuff.
I feel like if you're building a group hug deck that doesn't win,
Yeah.
you're just playing like you. Who
Stop.
are you, and how can
Stop
I
it
bring
right
you
now.
into my games? Because I'd like you around.
Just accelerate with no other nefarious purposes whatsoever.
Like they come in with a mask, they just like put out a bunch of like dictative Karametra and then fuck off.
Want to buy some ants? No. Yes, I've been a huge fan of these recently.
Yes.
Honestly, just general cards that accelerate the game. I think we even mentioned in the first half, we've been loving Descent into Avernus lately.
Oh my god. So our first like proper experience where Walt and I experienced Descent to Avernus together was on stream. Someone, one of the guys from the CDH community came on our Twitch channel to play some casual with us.
Yes, he was playing a Kesket and
Togo deck.
Yeah.
It was rock sacrifice stuff.
Yeah, make rocks, sacrifice them to Kesket to
Get card advantage.
It
was a really cool deck.
Drainy, artifacty kind of effects. Yeah, it was really nice.
But Descent to Avernus was played in that deck.
Yes.
And holy hell, we've never had a quicker stream.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
so for
that
those who
game
don't-
ended.
Yes, it definitely did. For those who don't know, Descent
Try again. Take two.
into Avernus is a enchantment for 2 and a red.
Yep.
It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you create 2 treasure tokens.
It does have counters on it, I think.
You put 2 counters on it. Then
it.
each player basically creates treasure tokens equal to the counters and takes damage equal to the counters on it.
Each player, including the pilot.
So first turn, when it comes back around to your turn, you're just going to be dealing 2, making 2 treasures for everybody in the upkeep.
Yeah.
But as the game goes longer, though it won't go very much longer.
Well, I mean, the next turn rotation, it's making
4
treasures
and 4 damage.
Then the turn after that, 6.
That turn was the turn the game ended.
It was down for 3 turns, and then it ended.
And it ended on like that person's turn. Like that
Yes.
person didn't even survive their turn.
No, it ended right before, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, like halfway through the turn, that player died. So yeah, like
even when we were building Nick's deck on stream the
Oh,
other
yeah.
night, we were like, "Oh my god, Descent to Avernus actually synergizes with this deck as well."
You
This is so
already
good.
want tokens, and yeah, the card is just fun. It's also not very expensive. I think it got reprinted in a pre-con or something. It's like $4. Just like play this card. It just like accelerates the game. It's pure like rocket fuel. You can't feel bad about it because it's just like
It's slowly becoming one of our favorite cards.
I love what it does to a game, and honestly, it reminds me of similarly in recent games that I've seen. Fletcher, who supports us on Patreon.
in the Space Commander tier.
In the Space Commander
Fletcher,
tier.
you are the
Thank you,
best.
Fletcher. Fletcher has been playing like a lot of like mono red decks and stuff, and he just plays in like every one of his decks that he's built recently. Just those like generic cards like Howling Mine, where people just draw extra cards in their draw step. These just accelerate everyone towards their win cons so rapidly, and like admittedly, you have to be careful about like how rapidly you accelerate certain players. Like in certain pods, you just turn that one player into the winner like it's so quickly.
And especially, sometimes you have to look at, especially if you've built these, like, for example, Descent into Avernus. You've got that in your hand, you look at the table, and someone's playing a Brutaclad Telecore Engineer deck.
Yeah,
maybe I'm accelerating them too much.
Yeah, it can happen, but like the general effect that happens on a game when people either have more mana with something like Descent into Avernus, or more cards with something like Howling Mine,
Or just damage is being thrown around.
Yeah, people just have more to do, and there's more game actions being done to deal damage to people, to get people drawing closer to their win cons.
To progress board states.
The games just go faster. It's fun.
And I think that the key here is, like, obviously cards like Descent to Avernus are amazing, but where your deck building can break parity on this group slug / group hug thing.
That's the secret if you're the group hug player, for sure.
So, for example, my 9th Doctor deck, which makes multiple upkeeps, I run Braids, the blue Braids, and Gate to the Aether, which is like a 6 mana kind of better version of Braids. It can drop more permanents.
But basically, both of them just say in your upkeep, I mean, they've got different criteria of what kind of permanent you can drop. But
Each player in their upkeep can drop a cool thing.
But only in their upkeep.
Yeah.
So in every turn cycle, I'm dropping something, player 3's dropping something, player 4's dropping something. James drops 2 things because he gets 2 upkeep.
Because I'm just good like that. But like, this is like the kind of stuff that we really like, where we can break parity. And then there's a bunch of generic cards that I think we have just gravitated towards in our Commander career. I mean, it would be remiss of us not to mention the card merchant's feature of this week, Agitator Ant.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, that card is one of those cards that accelerates your opponents, but you naturally kind of break parity with it because
you're goading at the same time. Yeah,
so
people are going to be
towards your opponents.
Yeah, swinging other players, but they're also making their creatures bigger, so the damage that's being dealt around the table will be higher.
And also, when you get to the end of the game and it's a one-on-one, you got to break parity with it somehow.
Totally. There's a bunch of cards that do very similar things to Agitator Ant. Orzhov Advocus is a good example.
Noble Heritage is the background from Baldur's Gate 2, I think it was, or Commander Legends.
Yeah,
maybe?
in your upkeep, people can put counters on stuff, but if they do, you gain protection from that player until your next turn.
Yes, I believe it's
2 counters, I think
it might be 2 counters. Maybe look it up.
I'll pull that one up.
But yeah, like cards like this that force your opponent into combat, even like, Disrupt Decorum is a sorcery, a once-off thing.
Just go to everything.
That just makes everything go a bit quicker. But like, for example, there are really good strategies where you can include some of these cards. Like, okay, let's take Landfall, for example, right? Rites of Flourishing. It's a 3-mana enchantment that says every player can play an extra land. But you're in a landfall deck.
Yeah.
Your deck is going to break power. Of course, you could play Exploration, right? That you should probably also be playing.
Yes.
But Rites of Flourishing will progress everyone else. The whole game will go quicker.
Yeah.
And you'll probably break parity on it, meaning you're probably in the prime position to win that game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's unlikely that other people will have landfall triggers. But also, like, if you have a Ramunap Excavator and a fetch land in your bin...
You are cooking with gas, son.
Not only are you hitting both of your land drops every turn, you're getting probably 4 landfall triggers in that scenario,
Let's say you're running that and Exploration. Now you're getting 6 triggers.
Sick.
Then you're running Mina and Den.
Super huge fan. Noble Heritage, by the way, works almost exactly like we said. In your upkeep, people can put 2 counters on a creature they control, and then for each opponent who does, you gain protection from that player until your next turn.
Yeah, bang on.
Yeah.
Cards like Dictative Crufix.
Yeah, this is the same as the Howling Mine thing.
Yep.
Everyone draws an extra card in their draw step. It breaks parity because you can flash it in, so you're the first player to get benefit on that one.
Yeah, but if your deck cares about card draw and you're already running stuff like Teferi's Ageless Insight...
Oh yeah, you're drawing more cards.
You're drawing more cards than everyone else.
Again, similar to the landfall thing, you might have the things that trigger when you draw cards.
Psychosis Crawler.
Yeah, you might be on Chasm Skulker, something similar. Those things are going to break parity because, when you draw cards, things happen.
Yeah, or your commander is the snake guy, the Zixris.
Oh, Zyrus? I never know how to say it.
It's got like an X and a Z in it. It's really hard to pronounce.
Very strange. Speaking of cards that care about drawing cards, in my Card Draw Matters deck / Life Gain Matters deck that plays Teferi's Ageless Insight, I run Tidal Barracuda.
Oh, I love Tidal Barracuda in like games that like...
So fun.
It is a card that straight up says you give everyone a benefit, but that benefit turns off on your turn.
Yeah.
You get protection on your turn, effectively.
Yeah, so basically everyone can play spells as though they had flash, but players can't cast spells during your turn.
So it's a card that breaks parity on its own.
Yeah, like you straight up, like you get the flash benefit that everybody else does, but also it's Grand Abolisher, like effectively the card.
In blue.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Are you running this card in your 9th Doctor deck? Because I know you're after more flash enablers. This would be a really good one.
Oh my god, the penny just dropped. That's a really good shout.
I know you've already got the like...
I've got for Dalcanori, I've got Leyline of Anticipation. I've now also got Born Upon a Wind and
sick.
Emergent Zone is the other one I've slotted in there.
Yeah,
but Tidal Barracuda
would be a good one because also by the time it gets around to your turn, people might be holding up removal spells.
Yeah.
Maybe you get to deploy the win cons and stuff.
I like that. Something else I've been thinking a lot about recently. I know it's one of the cards that we were like, this is really annoying to resolve and play. But Wheel of Misfortune. This is the really complicated wheel where everyone chooses a number.
You kind of gamble for your wheel.
Yeah.
So you can pay a bunch of life and definitely wheel, or you can choose to basically never wheel and pay 0 life.
That's exactly the thing that I think people are overlooking with this card. You can choose not to wheel.
Yeah.
So you're giving your opponents the choice of like, all right, do you want to wheel or do you think the cards in your hand are going to get you to a win? So Wheel of Misfortune really is a helpful wheel for the table because it's a selective wheel.
So I like sort of comparing this to the kind of thing that lets you draw extra cards in a turn.
Yeah.
It's similarly going, okay, if you are in the lead and have a great hand, you just keep it.
Yep.
But if you're behind and you want to get accelerated towards your win, you can, or if you have 1 or 2 cards in hand, like Wheel of Misfortune is best when you are a deck that's bad at drawing cards,
Yes.
right? The stronger it gets, the better you are at emptying your hand, the stronger it gets. Because if you've got one card in hand and you wheel,
Yeah.
and everyone else has 7, then yeah, you've gone up 6 cards. Everyone else is exactly
even
where they were.
Cards like Windfall, right? Everyone draws up to the cards that you have the most cards in hand. The most cards discarded this way. So
Totally. So everyone's, in terms of cards, people are just straight up reaching the best player.
yeah, and it catches everyone up, right? But like Wheel of Misfortune gives you the choice and gives your opponents the choice. And I think cards like that are just going to accelerate the game towards an end.
Totally. I agree. I think another thing you can do maybe this is kind of funny after we talk about soft stacks pieces, but protection pieces can kind of secure the win, is what I would say. Like, if you have the heroic intervention, if you have the Teferi's protection at the right time.
I mean, in response to a board wipe.
Yeah, if your board is the only one that is untouched, you might win that game. I mean, I said this earlier with my Gandalf deck, but when I cast Wrath of God, I have a Faith's Reward in my deck. So, like, it's a totally valid win con for me if I have enough mana and both cards in my hand. I imagine most people would concede if the board was completely wiped. I keep everything.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, if you do the combo thing like that, that's pretty amazing. But like, if someone else goes for a board wipe because you're in the lead,
and then
you cast
reward,
or you cast heroic intervention,
Yeah.
or Teferi's protection is another classic one.
True.
You have basically cast for heroic intervention is 1 and a green. You have just successfully cast 1 and a green, destroy your opponent's boards.
Oh yeah, like the board wipe itself has now become your win.
Yes, and it definitely
an
can
empty
just
board.
get you to a win. There
Absolutely.
are lots of. I mean, we referred to cards like, Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, and
Yes.
stuff as protection.
Definitely.
But these kind of cards are a bit different. Another card that I'd put in a very similar category is Ink Shield.
Oh, I mean, this card is amazing because it's a protection piece stapled to a win con.
I tell you what you need to know that just shows you how good this card is. The Sheldon Secret Lair spellbook has Ink Shield in it because it was one of Sheldon's favorite cards to play.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yep, the
Straight
creator
up.
of Commander thought it was like the best time you could have.
In 5 mana, you say, hey, your attempt to win is now my attempt to win. Thank you very much.
For those not familiar, because I know this was only printed in a pre-con, so unless you looked for it,
Is
you
it
might
still
not know
only
it.
printed in a precon? Oh, and
Now
the Secret Lair.
Lair. I think that's the only time we've seen it. But yeah, it's a 5 mana instant, 3 black white. So you have to be in Orzhov colors or, more than Orzhov.
Yep.
You fog. So you prevent all damage that will be dealt this turn. For each 1 damage prevented to you, you create a 2/1 Inkling with flying.
With flying, people. With flying.
If this spell...
For every 1
Yeah.
damage you prevent this way, it's stupid. It's really,
absolutely
really
silly.
good.
I mean, like, if this exact card said, for each damage prevented this way, you create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying, that card would still be gas. That
Even
would
if it
turn-
didn't have flying, in my opinion, still gas.
I mean, people play Arachnogenesis. That's
Basically the same thing, yeah.
But, like, yeah, if it was 5 mana, make that many 1/1 flyers, it would be gas. You are turning every 1 point of damage into 2 in the air. It
So
just
if-
wins the game. If someone swings you for 30, it's like, okay, I now have 60 damage in the air. If someone doesn't wipe that turn, it's like, okay, people are dying this turn cycle.
It's silly. I think protection is like one of those things that can prolong a game, but if it's played right and it's the right kind of like instant speed, one-off protections in great response to a board wipe or that kind of thing,
Yeah.
it can end them as well.
People might just concede. Like,
Yeah.
if I see someone with 60 power in the air and life totals are 20
GG.
each, I'd be like, okay, can we call it?
Yeah.
I think the game is over now.
I tell you what, I think this one's kind of obvious. We were talking about it before with card draw, but card draw. I think that genuinely, I think people neglect how much efficient card draw means you are progressing to the end of your game.
Yeah.
I know we're talking a lot about like board states here. We're talking about like, okay, to deploy your Craterhoof Behemoth,
Yeah.
you need a lot of creatures.
Yeah.
But to get to a board state where you have a lot of creatures, you need to draw a lot of cards so you can deploy things in the right order.
Totally.
And I think efficient card draw is something you can throw in a deck. And like, yes, I know Ristic Study, so boring, but it is really, really powerful and will just accelerate a game to an end. It makes you a really big threat.
Oh, I think this is also, if you're like removing the removal,
If you're removing the
if you're removing the removal, like we talked
you
about
card
earlier.
Swords to Plowshares on your go for the throat in your deck building process.
But like, I think that if you're going to replace the removal with something, I know we mentioned win cons, but like you can play less removal in your decks if they the deck draws cards more effectively. Like the reason I can get away with 2 board wipes in most of the decks that I own is I think that I play 15 to 20 bits of card draw in pretty much every deck I build these days.
Yeah, and so you always find it.
Yeah, you don't need to, like, if you're going to dig 30 cards deep in most games, the likelihood you hit one of your 2 board wipes is pretty good.
Well, let's even think about it in terms of targeted removal. In an average game, I maybe target to remove something 6 times.
I reckon
7
it's less.
times. Maybe
I reckon
more for
it's
me
more like-
because it's probably the way I like to play. But
I'm probably like the 3 to 4 mark.
3 to 4, let's go 3 to 6, right?
Okay, sure.
3 to 6. Let's say we only run 5 pieces.
Yeah.
So, like right in the middle.
Yeah.
That's less than what our template suggests, right? We usually say 7 to 8.
Yeah.
But now we're playing really efficient card draw in our deck. We're playing wheels. We're playing like really great, like Ristic Study, something like that. We are going to find those 5 pieces to cast all 5 of them to get up to our needed 5 pieces of removal in a game.
Totally.
More often, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, don't disregard our numbers. Like, we say 8 to 10 for a reason.
There's a reason why we did that whole goddamn episode.
Yeah. But also, like, there's a reason we don't say 15. And I think
Yes.
this is the reason, is that, like, the decks that me and James build are very good at drawing cards. They're very good at finding outs. And, if you can find the cards you need, you don't necessarily need to run so many of the cards you need, if that makes sense. And, like, in a similar vein, if you're not drawing cards, I know I'm someone who moves away from this, but you can just run tutors.
I was going to say the exact same thing, and I was going to preface it with, I hope I don't upset you here, Walt, because I know you took all the tutors out of your decks.
Look, most of them.
Different reasons.
There are decks that still run a few of them, like, my Merrin deck where Gerard is the secret win con.
You got Buried Alive in there.
I actually don't think I have Buried Alive, but I've got like 4 other shooters in there.
To get to the graveyard.
Yeah, if you need particular cards more often than others, I think more tutors is good.
Yeah.
But like, you can run tutors. Like, it's a thing you can do.
Yeah, we did a whole episode that kind of said take tutors out of your deck to increase variance in your games.
Yeah.
But again, this lens that we're looking at this today is how to end the game. And like, I think maybe tutors that are more specific conditional is another really good one that like gets maybe, for example, tutors that just get your win conditions. So like, maybe if you're in a burn deck or like a spellslinger deck, maybe run a solve the equation.
Yeah.
Just so you can find your
Comet Storm,
Cracker with Power, whatever it might be.
Yeah, my old Wizards deck was way more efficient and way better at ending the game when I ran even like bad tutors. Like I was running Firemind's Insight.
Yeah.
But because I could
Weird
reduce
shooter.
it by 5 and cast it for blue-red, it was fetch 3 cards for 2 mana. That was pretty good. But yes, like in general, I think conditional tutors also, they limit what you can do in a good way. Like, I think have tutors for your win cons, exactly as you said. So like if you're in like my Gandalf deck, for instance, I run Inventor's Fair as a land in the deck.
Gets an artifact.
Or I also have Oswald Fiddlebender, that's
Only
very
gets
conditional.
artifacts and only gets artifacts of specific CMCs.
But at certain times in the game, when I have my Parhelion on the board, I know that I can sack Parhelion and go and get my Phyrexian Triniform. And
that'll end a game.
That will probably end a game. And like in a similar vein, my Averna deck, this is my
Cascade list.
Temur Cascade Landfall deck. I run, what's that 5-mana tutor that gets 2 creatures to your hand? Shared Summons.
Oh,
I
the
run,
5-mana one. Yeah.
I run Shared Summons in my deck, but it's mostly just because I know that if I have Emoti on the battlefield, I'm probably going to win.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
So if I get Emoti and I get Apex Devastator, I'm
game
set.
over. And if you get Emoti, cast Emoti on the first turn that you have it, then cast Apex Devastator the next turn, you are winning that game.
It's very, very likely. And I think that like in decks that, especially that have narrower win cons or win cons that require a more specific board state, having a couple of tutors, like it's not gonna, I know we've said like, it'll reduce
and also
the
more
variance.
Like glass cannony decks that like struggle to win. Tutors help them get to that win.
Yeah, bolster just the percentage of the time you get to cast the win con by running a few tutors.
I'll also say that combos, whether they're infinite or otherwise, are ways to really efficiently end the game. I know that Walt has said on the podcast a few times, especially in the Confessions episode, that you hate combos.
Yes.
But combos really do, and you can't deny this, end games.
They do. And look, I want to be clear that I am a bit of a hypocrite because I did effectively outline a combo earlier. It wasn't an infinite combo,
Yeah,
but
Emodi plus Apex Data Setter.
Yep, that's one. Also, Wrath of God into Faith's Reward.
Yes, that's a combo.
Those are 2 cards that effectively, on the right board state, win the game.
Big hypocrite.
Look, I find infinite combos a little bit boring, as I've said it. And I won't outline it again because I've said it so very many times. But yes, like even in decks that I own, like, I've talked about my Arami deck, how I run Sir Conrad the Grim. This is the, creature you drain everyone equal to your devotion.
Honestly, even Arami and any creature is a combo. Like you're combining Arami and Gary to win the game.
Totally. I mean, look, if you encore one of the bloody the moldy bread is what I'm thinking of.
Oh, Sepulchral Primordial.
Thank you. You remembered the Thrifty Thursdays where I compared him to a sack of moldy bread.
I'm actually a fan, Walt. You don't understand. I actually enjoy these.
I appreciate it so much. Anyway, I've already blanked on what it was called.
Sepulchral Primordial.
Sepulchral Primordial.
Unbelievably good card.
Yes.
Yoinks a thing from everyone's graveyard.
Yes, and if you encore it, it yoinks 3 things from everyone's graveyard.
It's broken.
That on its own, with Arami is a combo that can win the game. So like win cons can be win cons that like require certain board states, or they can be win cons that require a card or 2, and that was basically what we would call a combo.
Yeah, and I think that the kind of warning that I want to put here as well is that if you're combining tutors and really efficient card draw and combos, especially infinite combos, like for example, in my Scorpion God deck, I've got an infinite combo with Yawgmoth and Nest of Scarabs. If you don't understand it, look it up. It's a really fun combo.
It is.
But I could win because I have Aristocrats effects in there. So I'm infinitely draining everyone on the table, right? There are times where I think that the deck is like, the range of power that it could be is very like mid to, because that combo's in there, very high.
Yeah.
The potential of that deck is very high.
It can theoretically end the game on turn 5 or 6.
Yes.
If you draw the exact right cards.
Correct.
And so the ideal scenario of that deck versus my Averna deck is quite different.
So in those games where Walt wants to play Averna and I want to play Scorpion God, I will, and I've said this before on the podcast, just flip one of those cards upside down. It's a basic land.
Yeah.
And then it's still a synergy piece in my deck, but it doesn't mean that I have the capacity to go infinite.
Yeah, I guess there's a delicate interplay that's happening here, which is like, yes, we want to end the game more efficiently. We want to find more ways to end the game by playing better card draw, by playing better tutors. Those are all really good things, but yes, each of those things is incrementally increasing the consistency of your deck, which for the purpose of ending the game is great, but for the purpose of power level is just bumping you slowly up. So just be wary of how many of these things you add at the same time.
And also look for the combo cards that are going to be synergy in your deck without being part of an infinite combo.
True. There's nothing worse than having a bunch of cards in your deck that are just the infinite, and then the rest of the deck is doing something completely different.
Yeah.
Because those are the combos that people really feel quite put out by, and I'm including myself definitively in this camp.
I mean, look, I'll even join you in that camp.
Yeah.
Like if I'm playing a casual game, I want to see the casual game end in like a thematical way. Like if you're playing a big mana deck, I kind of expect you to end the game in a big mana way.
I don't want to see Isoconcept's a dramatic reversal.
Well, I mean, if you want to go infinite mana, I would even feel okay with that. But if you're playing a big mana deck and you end it with like a persist infinite loop with Micaeus, I'm like, how
weird.
is that in your deck?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
these 2 cards are bad in the deck, except when you specifically combo off.
I'm pretty happy to see Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal separately in a big mana deck than I am Micaeus. Do you know what I mean?
That does make sense to me. Yeah, totally.
Look, I think it's about time. We've been talking for an hour all up. I think it's about time we actually look at some bloody win condition cards.
We said that we would, and I understand, like, we wanted to go into, like, other ways you can end the game quickly.
The first episode we ever did was just rattling off a bunch of win cons. So let's
we're going to revisit some of that for those of you who want a refresher on ways you can end the game. We've got some new ones here.
Yeah.
There's been cards printed since that first episode that are good ways of ending the game.
And I'll just preface as well, like, these are cards, remember the definition of win con, these are cards that can win you the game if you've gotten to a point where deploying this ends the game. A lot of the time, deploying these on their own without setup might not get you a win.
Totally.
Just keep that in mind.
And again, like, we're listing a bunch of win cons here. The goal is not to play all of them.
Yeah.
You are aiming for 5, I think we said, or maybe it was even 4.
I think we said 4.
Yeah, because we said 5 enhancers. That's right. Yeah, so, 4 of these, theoretically, and just pick the ones that synergize most with your deck.
Yeah. So let's go through a couple of, like, generic commander strategies.
Sure.
An easy one to start with. Let's start with combat damage-based win cons.
Yep, if you're going wide, you can't go wrong with the classic overrun style effects. The card Overrun is a good example. But
That's where the name comes from.
Yep, Overwhelming Stampede is the quintessential piece here. Even Achroma's will do it occasionally. This one gives you basically your creatures every keyword ever, including protection from all colors, which reads unblockable.
Yeah. My favorite one in this category, actually, I love this card, Beastmaster Ascension.
This
This
in
is
specific decks,
Yeah, I
this
really
can
like
really
this.
get people. It's a 3-mana enchantment. When a creature you control attacks, you put a beast counter or something.
quest
on it.
counter, I
It's
think.
a quest. It
Is
is a
it
quest counter.
Yeah.
And then when it has 5 or more,
I think it's 8, actually.
okay, it's quite a few counters you got to get on there. So creatures got to attack 5 or more times, or 8 times, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then once you get to there, creatures you control just get a static
Plus
+5
5. Like, I run this in my plant Phylaf deck.
Yeah.
This card's out of nowhere. The other thing I really like about it, it's 3 mana. If you can attack with 8 creatures to get all 8 quest counters on it, for 3 mana, you effectively get an overrun effect.
Permanently.
Compared to 6 or 5 mana, or Crater Hoof being 8.
Overrun is, I think, a good comparison because it's the quintessential example here, and it's been reprinted a bunch of times. 5 mana to get +3/+3 and trample is still a good rate, even in 2024. But Beastmaster Ascension is 3 mana to get +5/+5. You don't get trample, which can be a problem on certain boards.
But it's permanent.
It is permanent, and if you're going wide enough, it won't matter.
No. I also really like the new Nissa Ascendant Animus. This is the Phyrexianized Nissa.
So if you pay the full cost and you don't Phyrexianize her,
Yes.
then she can immediately downtick, and I think she dies.
She dies. It's 7 loyalty,
And
comes in 7 loyalty to downtick.
But creatures you control get +X for each forest you control and gain trample.
Yeah. It's
So,
really strong.
In a mono green deck,
Yeah.
this is likely to be pay 7 for this 7 mana thing, downtick, +7/+7 and trample. It's going to win the game.
The other reason I really like it is it's a win con, but it also can be value in your deck because the uptick creates tokens.
Yeah.
And so early game, it's a great card. Late game, ends the game.
It's also got a low downtick, not one that kills her, that just naturalizes something,
It
destroys
just
an artifact or enchantment.
I think it might be just enchantment from
I'm
memory.
pretty sure it naturalizes, but I could be wrong. I'll
check
pull it up. Yeah.
Okay, I'll talk about go tall strategies while
Sure,
you're looking that
sounds
up. Because combat damage, you're either going wide or going tall.
Yeah, it naturalizes.
Naturalizes?
Yep, destroys an artifact or enchantment. Yeah.
There you go.
Great card. Wow.
Sick card. I love the art on the full extended art version
Yeah.
of it. It's so
Very cool. Very cool.
Going tall.
Sure.
Chandra's Ignition.
I love this card.
Classic win con. If you've got a 30/30 creature,
Yep.
you can't swing it at everyone in one turn.
No.
But you can cast a 5 mana. Is it sorcery?
Or
is it I think it's sorcery.
I hope it is.
I think so.
It's a sorcery. Target creature you control does damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So if you've counted high enough with your creature and it's got more than 30 power, you're in luck. If everyone's at 30 or less life, it doesn't dome you either. So it's not like a hurricane sort of effect where you have to have the highest life total. Nope. If you just have more life than, if opponents are at 30, you've got a 30/30 creature, pay 5, you win.
Yeah, Warstorm Surge is another one of these, it's a little bit, I would call this an alternate win con in those decks.
It's because you're probably usually winning with combat, but you're choosing not to if you're going Warstorm Surge.
Yeah.
But in a dragon deck, Warstorm Surge is just
amazing.
Dome anything for 5 every time you get that 5/5 dragon. Yeah.
Another card that I've recently just found for these strategies, which I really love.
Sure.
Arc Bond. It's 2 and a red for an instant. This is from Fate Reforged, by the way. It's been around for ages, but I've not seen it enough.
Sure.
Choose target creature. It's an instant. Whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each other creature and each other player. So this is a really, really sneaky way. If you've got a lot of these decks often run things like Brash Taunter and stuff like that because they'll have one of these massive creatures.
Yeah, that they're going to fling.
Or they put they make it fight Stuffy Doll or they make it fight Brash Taunter.
Yeah.
So if you combine that with this,
that's fun.
That is a sick combo where you can just blow someone out.
It's also a great response to another great go tall win con, which is Crash Through. Ram through, sorry.
Ram through,
if someone tries to ram through you and you respond with Arc Bond.
That's
good
pretty
luck,
funny.
bro. GG.
Also, you mentioned it before. Your Merrin deck is a secret Golgari.
Gerard Golgari Lich Lord.
Yeah, that's the guy. He drains everyone equal to the power of...
Yeah, you pay 1 black green and sack a creature and each opponent loses life equal to its power. Yep, that can win games for sure.
Especially
It's done
if you're
it many
running.
times.
What's the weird 5 mana 11/9 that you Demogoth Titan?
Oh, David got Titan's a 4 mana 11
4
9.
mana. What the hell?
I mean, the real like absolute gas is that 5 mana creature from a while ago now, like Shards of Alara or something. It's just got like power and toughness equal to the number of cards in all graveyards.
Oh, it's the Eater
Soul
of
of
Worlds
Eternity or something like that. Yeah, I forget. But that card, yep,
Crazy
that
card.
and Gerard is like, I win.
All right, let's move on to more cool win cons or cool deck strategies because
Sure.
combat bores me.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about graveyard stuff
Sure.
in general because there's a lot of different stuff. You can do mass reanimation, mill,
Yeah.
some aristocrat strategies as well. Like you mentioned before, Command the Dreadhorde is a really amazing card if you're in a reanimation deck or an aristocrats deck.
Well, that is a pure aristocrats deck, that one. Like, it's got a few reanimation spells. But yeah, I think even if you are pure aristocrats, I'm talking like Taysa Karlov, you know, all I care about is death triggers. Just having all the creatures and a free sack outlet is a win con. So
Yep.
yeah, your Command the Dreadhorde is going to work great. Rise of the Dark Realms, just nick everything out of every
if you've got a slightly
graveyard.
bigger budget on your card spending,
Yes. Although it got reprinted in the pre-cons. It's only about $8 now.
Seriously?
Yeah, I picked up a copy the other day. I think it's a really good price for Rise of the
That's
Dark Realms.
really annoying. I bought mine for like nearly $20.
Yeah, it was expensive before.
Damn.
Super hot on a recent card. I think I mentioned this specifically when I talked about cards in the data episode that had ended more games than others. I mentioned like Bolus of Citadel,
Yep.
like Eighth of Flux, or like one of those other really classic win cons, and I mentioned Breach the Multiverse.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned this card. This card is
It's so gas.
sick. If you're in a mill strategy as well, this card goes in that deck.
Well,
because
'cause it
each
mills
player
you, yeah.
mills 10 cards, and then
you just get a creature card out of every graveyard.
so it's mill plus a Sepulchral Primordial in a
Yeah.
sorcery spell.
It's so unbelievably good. I don't think I've ever seen it cast in a game and the player who cast it has not immediately become a threat.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
No, never ever.
That's how strong it is.
Speaking of mill, Sir Conrad the Grim,
Yeah.
great win condition card. Obviously, that needs to be combined with a mill effect.
Yeah, like an Ultra of Dementia or some way to
Yeah.
mill lots of people in one go kind of thing.
I'd
I
say
mean,
it-
Breach the Multiverse is a great
Yeah,
place
there you go.
for it.
Combine
Yeah.
Breach the Multiverse and Sir Conrad.
It might deal 12 around the board or something like that.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
A card that I know we're not great, me and you. We try and avoid like Universes Beyond cards in our
Yeah,
decks.
I mean, just for flavor reasons.
Just for flavor reasons, but we played with the Fallout precons on stream.
yeah.
And I have been looking at a card with like teaming eyes.
Sure.
Nuclear Fallout.
Oh.
This is the board wipe that also gives people rad counters. So
Right.
each creature, so it's black, and X. Each
Okay.
creature gets twice neg X.
Oh, that's right. And then each player gets X rad counters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
sick win con card.
for those who don't know the Fallout mechanic rad, basically when you have that much radiation, when you move to your turn after your draw step, right? Pre-combat main phase.
At the beginning of pre-combat main phase.
So after you draw your card, before you do anything else in your main phase, you have to mill cards equal to the number of rad counters you have, and then you lose life and rad counters equal to the number of non-land cards you mill this way. But yeah, if you get that X count high enough, not only are you wiping the board, you might have an Aristocrats effect or a Conrad or something.
Yeah.
If you just get it to the point where people have 10 rad counters and they're at 10 life, good luck, bro.
They might die.
You might mill 10 and lose 10.
Yeah. And I really like Rad as well as just a mill support thing because it's mill that is consistent and goes up and down and doesn't always is just like a one-off mill half your library. It can, you could get really unlucky and mill 4 land cards. So next turn you have to mill 4 more again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's cool. And it's bringing the life total down, so it's progressing the game like we were saying before.
It's working a bit like Descent into Avernus. It's just like accelerating the game forwards.
I'm a big
definitely.
fan of the mechanic anyway. That's what I was
Yeah,
kind of
no,
alluding to.
I think it's good at ending the game, either as a win con or just as that slow value of grinding the game to a halt. I mean, obviously, if you're milling the whole library, Lab Man is a totally valid win con.
If you draw a card where your library's got no cards in it, you just win.
Yep, that's a way to win.
I also really like Mnemonic Deluge. This is that ridiculous 9 mana mythic sorcery
6
from...
blue, Exiles on Resolution.
I think it might be 5 blue, blue, blue. Anyway, it's huge. But it exiles
lot.
on resolution. You exile an instant or sorcery card from a graveyard.
Yeah.
And you copy it 3 times, cast it without paying the mana cost.
And then exiles on resolution. Thank God.
Yeah, looping this
loop
would
it
be
like crazy.
It's insane. But
But yeah, getting 3 copies of the best spell in your opponent's graveyards. I mean, getting 3 copies of Breach the Multiverse.
that will definitely end
almost
the game.
certainly end the game.
Yep.
Nicking, 6 creatures altogether, milling your opponents for 20 each?
Well, 30 because
30.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow, that's a pretty brutal hit.
Oh, you actually get 9 creatures. You get 3 from each bin.
3 from each bin.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that would end the game.
Oh no,
That
you
would
get
have
one
to
from your own bin.
Oh my God,
You get 12. Holy hell, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a sick combo.
That's a combo.
Yeah,
Honestly,
there you go.
Those 2 cards, that's enough.
That's enough.
That will win you the game.
Life gain strategies.
Sure.
Great cards like Sanguine Bond.
Yep.
Aetherflux Reservoir.
Yes.
You pay 50 life, you deal 50 damage. It's
Yep.
referred to as the Death Star.
Yep.
Even like a life gain deck that's whole strategy is just to live long enough to build up a ton of mana to resolve a debt to the Deathless.
Oh,
Or-
yep. Each opponent loses a bunch of life. You gain that
Yep.
much life. Exsanguinate does the same thing.
Yep.
Even Torment of Hailfire.
Yep.
To a lesser extent, I mean, you don't gain the life in that case. But yeah, it is a card that will end the game by draining a bunch of life.
I mean,
for
that
sure.
kind of fits in a win con in like big mana spellslinger decks as well.
Totally.
Right?
If you've got enough mana to sink into it, you can just win the game that way. Yeah.
So like same with in the spellslinger strategy now, like Storm King's Thunder, Crackle with Power,
Yeah.
all of these cards. Oh my god! Just
Yeah.
if you have enough mana and sink it into it, no one's got the counterspell. You're probably winning the game.
Oh, Storm King's Thunder, honestly, in combination with like any good spell in your deck. Like I've won a game with my Kaza Wizards deck by making Storm King's Thunder like Exile to 11 and then just casting 1 extra turn spell.
Take 11 extra
Yeah,
turns.
it's like, hey guys,
GG.
I think if I have 11 more turns, I can probably get there.
Yeah. I think Storm King's Thunder is just one of those, like, even if you get it X equals 3 and you resolve a good targeted removal spell and you
Yeah.
just deal with everyone's boards really well and leave yours untouched, it's like casting a one-sided board wipe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just good.
Oh, and obviously combined with a Comet Storm, something of that
Yeah.
effect. Copying that
Burn
even
spells
2 or
win
3
you the
times
game.
will
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
In Storm decks themselves, like, I've been really hot on Display of Power recently.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this is one of those cards that resolving it does nothing. But if you've got, like, for example, in my Savine deck, if I've got a stack of copied spells that are
Yeah.
all really valuable, and I then go Display of Power, and I copy everything on the stack again, game over.
So this is the instant where it can't be copied itself.
It's 1 red and a red.
Yeah, it can't be copied, and then you copy any number of spells. So they have to
Yep.
be on the stack, so you have to have already stormed off quite a lot before it becomes good. But yeah,
But
as
it's
the
a-
last spell on a storm turn, it can just win the game.
It's the win con, right?
Yeah.
Same with, like, I mean, this is like more of like a setup card kind of win con, but gutter snipe in those decks.
This is more of that incremental value.
Yeah.
Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent takes 2 damage.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
It
Yeah.
deals 2 damage to each opponent.
Yeah, it's red. It's not black.
Yeah. And
It's
then
got to read like that.
Aetherflux Reservoir again in a storm deck. Great way to win a game.
Look, I find the card so boring, but look, it will end the game, which
Yeah.
is what we set out to do in the end.
100%. Look, playing Commander is so much fun. I mean, you're listening to a podcast about playing Commander. But we don't want to feel like we're stuck in a game with no end in sight. We want to win. So ensuring that we are building towards the end of the game by avoiding things that simply extend the game and including things that get us to the end of the game means that when we deploy our win condition cards, the game ends. Look, I really recommend sharing this episode with your playgroup and maybe on your Commander nights that include all these board wipes. And maybe you can actually start playing games or having Commander nights that are 3 to 4 games instead of just 1. So, Space Commanders,
Command received.
We did it. We revisited episode 1.
Episode 1.
How cool.
Next week, episode 2. No.
This is it. It's now just an endless cycle of revisiting the old
We
topics.
may only get to 80 and then 160 and then 240. To listeners out there, do you feel commanded? What do you think of our ways to end the game? And can you think of any others that we didn't include that you like to bring the game to a close?
Yeah, what's your descent to Avernus? Because we're so hot on that card right
Yeah,
now.
I want to hear about the rocket fuel. Like,
Yeah.
yes, win cons. Tell us about your win cons. Also, tell us about those cards that just seem to just get you there there.
Just make games go quicker.
Yeah.
Look, you can tell us on all the platforms at Get Commanded everywhere, Instagram, Twitter, your choice. But if you want to talk to us live while we're playing Commander, maybe playing with Descent to Avernus, join us on Twitch, twitch.tv/getcommanded. And definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel if you can't join us live, because you can still see all the silliness and fun over there as well.
You absolutely can. The YouTube channel is linked in the show notes. And of course, the best way to support our podcast is over on Patreon. We'd be lost without our awesome patrons. It's the absolute best way to make our content better. So we would like to thank our patrons, Stella Tam, Fuzzy, Bottomless Potamus, and Dyer, and an extra special shout out to Fletcher Cutting and Wizard Down Under, who support us in the Space Commander tier. You're the best.
Yeah, you are the best. And Wizard Down Under, hope you enjoy that new deck that we just gave a makeover on stream.
That was fun. Yeah, I hope we get to do more of those.
I really hope so too.
I hope some of you join the Patreon, specifically in the tiers where you can request a deck upgrade, because me and James had a blast making that deck.
And Wizard Down Under was having a blast in the chat as well.
Yeah, that was cool to see.
The whole chat was throwing suggestions at us like wild.
There were
it was
a bunch
really great
of
fun.
really cool includes that are cards I've never seen in my life. So appreciate it, chat. You helped us a lot.
And of course, thanks again to Palms Off Gaming, sponsors of this podcast. These guys make awesome deck boxes, sleeves, binders, and other gaming accessories, including all the stuff we gave away in our awesome giveaway just recently. You can check them out at palmsoffgaming.com.au /getcommanded to get 10% off your purchase and support us at the same time, which we'd really appreciate. So remember, palmsoffgaming.com.au /getcommanded.
Yeah, I reckon it's time to planeswalk out of here, James.
Out of the world of Magic?
We're leaving Magic, we're leaving Commander, we're leaving the win cons behind, as much as we loved them. I think it's your turn.
It is, and instead of going to a concert or a video game or something, we're going to a world called Trench.
Trench?
Trench. Yes, this is the fictitious world, the lore behind the band. I know I said we wouldn't go to a concert, but I'm a muso, so we're going to a music thing.
Sure.
Of the band 21 Pilots.
Okay, they have a world called The Trench?
Yes. Okay, so, all right. I've talked to I've said for you to listen to 21 Pilots a few times, but I don't think they're your kind of cup of tea.
I don't think I got there. I'm sorry to say.
Totally fair. They're a bit of a unique band. They've been around for a while.
Sure.
They were a big band for me in high school. You might recognize the song Stressed Out, if we could turn back time.
Oh, yes.
To the good old days.
I know that only from the memes.
Yes. I mean, it's a huge song. It got really famous, but that's one of many incredible songs that they make.
Cool.
The reason why I'm taking us to Trench is just recently 21 Pilots have released a brand new song called Overcompensate on their upcoming album Clancy. I'm not a shill for them, I promise. I just really love their music.
Just likes them a lot.
So, Clancy is the name of the album, right?
Uh-huh.
The fan base of 21 Pilots are fanatics.
Right.
They overanalyze. You know how like Taylor Swift fans analyze everything she ever tweets and puts out?
And she's definitely gay, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They overanalyze everything, right?
They do. They look into it, yes.
21 Pilots fans were doing it way before Taylor Swift.
Right. How long has 21 Pilots been around?
Been around for a while. I think their first album was like 2000, like early 2010s.
Okay.
Maybe like even earlier than that, 2008,
about as long as Taylor Swift, but it sounds like the lore is there.
Oh my lord. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to their first album, or the first album of this saga called Vessel.
Okay.
When that came out, internet forums, this was like MySpace days, guys.
Wow.
Right? They started recognizing that specific characters and places were referenced in multiple songs.
Okay.
Specifically a character called Blurry Face, a character called Clancy, upcoming album, and a place called Trench.
Right.
The next album was called Blurry Face. Another thing. They referenced a group of people called Nico and the Niners in a song. The next album was called Trench, which had a song on it called Nico and the Niners.
Ooh.
Right. At this point, the internet's gone wild. They're theorizing. They're putting pieces together.
There's something going on here.
There are music videos upon music videos to analyze, right?
Yeah.
And finally, after like 5 albums, they posted on their YouTube channel a video. I can't remember what it's called. It might be called The Lore of Trench.
Right.
And they basically did a video where they said, here's the lore of the past 5 albums we've been working on. They've been following. Without knowing it. We've been following it for a while, but we have been following the story of someone called Clancy escaping this world called Trench that is owned by this Illuminati-style group of people called Nico and the Niners, who the leader is known as Blurryface because he's painted black. It's unbelievably cool, and they put out this incredible video, and in the new song Overcompensate, in the music video, it was revealed that Tyler Joseph, the lead singer of 21 Pilots, is Clancy. And it just all came together. My favorite thing about all this was the album just before was called Scaled and Icy, and it didn't do very well because it didn't sound like them. The reason why it didn't sound like them is because the character Clancy was captured and forced to perform music for Nico and the Niners in style that he was not used to. How friggin' cool is all of that?
That last one, I will say, sounds very convenient.
No, it's like they specifically made an album that wasn't in their style, and they were fully prepared for it not to do well with their fan. The really interesting thing is it did really well in like mainstream markets.
Oh, so it's more of a poppy kind of sound.
Exactly, but it did really badly in like the alternative music
and probably
scene.
the diehard fans. Interesting.
But now we know it's because Clancy was captured by Nico and the Niners.
Wow.
Anyway, I've been nerding out about this with Theo, my boyfriend, for the past like week and a half, and I've been loving every minute. The album comes out next month. It's called Clancy. The first single is called Overcompensate. Go listen to it. If you've never listened to 21 Pilots before, you'll get hooked. I promise you. Promise.
Wow. Brandon Sanderson, eat your heart out.
Oh, it is. Brandon Sanderson listens to 21 Pilots for sure. He's about that life.
I love that. Well, I reckon that's all we have time for. So we'll see you next Friday for another transmission from the Space Commanders.
Goodbye, Commander players.
Boy.